St. Petersburg, Russia, winter of 1869. Snow falls heavily against the fogged windows of the University of St. Petersburg laboratory. Dmitri Ivanovich Mendeleev, at 35 years old, nervously walks between piles of scattered papers on his desk. His hands tremble slightly, not from the cold, but from exhaustion after weeks of little sleep. "Once more, Dmitri, once more," he mutters to himself, adjusting his slipping glasses on his sweaty nose. For months, he has been attempting to find a pattern among the 63 known elements. Handwritten cards cover every available surface in his small office, each containing the name, atomic weight, and properties of an element. Hydrogen, lithium, carbon, oxygen, they all seem to dance before his tired eyes. Sabe, é muita coisa. The door creaks softly. Anna Ivanovna, his second wife, enters carrying a tray with hot tea and black bread. "Dmitri, you haven't touched last night's dinner," she says, placing the tray on a pile of books. Her voice carries a mixture of concern and contained frustration. "The children asked about you again." Mendeleev looks up, noticing for the first time the dark circles under Anna's eyes. She has worn the same dark blue dress for 3 days, a sign she has avoided social activities, preferring to care for him during his moments of scientific obsession. "Forgive me, my dear," he whispers, gently touching her cold hand. "But I am so close, I can feel it. There's something here, a pattern that connects all these elements. If I can find it." "What if you don't?" Anna interrupts, her voice firmer than she intended. "What if this search consumes you completely? And if—" she hesitates, looking at the scattered cards, "what if it is never discovered?" "Bem, é medo justificado, né?" The question hangs in the cold air of the lab. Mendeleev feels a chill run down his spine. He had never considered this possibility. What if there really was no pattern? What if the elements were merely a random collection of substances with no logical connection? Outside, the wind howls through the stone buildings of the university. The sound seems to echo his own internal doubts. The pressure from the community. St. Petersburg, Russia, February of 1869. The university auditorium is packed. Professors, students, and members of the Russian Chemical Society wait impatiently as Mendeleev nervously arranges his papers at the podium. His hands sweat despite the cold that seeps through the large windows of the hall. "Professor Mendeleev," interrupts Dr. Nikolai Zinin, the department head, his voice echoing through the room. "3 months ago, you promised to present your new organization of the elements. The scientific community is waiting." Dmitri swallows dryly. In recent days, the pressure has grown. Letters arrive daily from chemists across Europe, inquiring about his progress. Some colleagues are beginning to whisper in the halls that perhaps he promised more than he can deliver. "Gentlemen," Mendeleev begins, his voice initially hesitant, "current chemistry lives in chaos. We have 63 known elements, but no logical organization to help us understand their relationships." A murmur spreads through the audience. The young professor Alexander Butlerov, sitting in the front row, frowns. "Dmitri Ivanovich, many of us have tried to organize the elements by atomic weight. John Newlands in England, Lothar Meyer in Germany. What's your contribution?" The question hits Mendeleev like a punch to the stomach. He knows other scientists are working on the same problem. The competition is fierce, and time is running out. É uma situação difícil." "The difference," he responds, trying to maintain his composure, "is that I believe there are gaps, elements still undiscovered that would complete the pattern." A wave of incredulous laughter sweeps the auditorium. Dr. Zinin leans forward, visibly irritated. "Professor, are you suggesting you can predict elements that don't even exist? That's not science, it's speculation." Mendeleev feels the sweat trickle down his back. He looks at the sea of skeptical faces in front of him, And in the back of the auditorium, he spots Anna, watching him with a deeply concerned expression. "Gentlemen," he says, taking a deep breath, "if I'm wrong, my academic career ends here. But if I'm right," his voice grows stronger, "we will revolutionize not only chemistry, but all of science." The silence that follows is deafening. Mendeleev gathers his papers with trembling hands, knowing he has risked everything. As he leaves the auditorium, he overhears fragments of conversations. Poor Dmitri, the pressure has driven him mad. Imaginary elements, what nonsense! He should retire before he destroys his reputation. The moment of revelation. St. Petersburg, Russia, February 17, 1869. 3 days after the disastrous presentation, Mendeleev hasn't left his laboratory. Anna leaves trays of food at the door, which he barely touches. The public humiliation has turned his obsession into desperation. The element cards are scattered on the floor like autumn leaves. Dmitri sits cross-legged in the middle of them like a child playing with pieces of an impossible puzzle. Hydrogen, weight 1. Lithium, weight 7. Carbon, weight 12. He murmurs repeatedly, moving the cards from side to side. Extreme exhaustion has left his mind in a delirious state. It is already 3 a.m. when his eyes begin to close involuntarily. He fights sleep, but finally succumbs, falling asleep at the table covered in papers. In his dream, he sees a large table laid before him. The elements begin to move on their own, organizing themselves into perfect rows and columns. Each one finds its exact place, as if an invisible force guides them. Elements he has never seen before appear in the empty spaces, unknown substances that fit perfectly into the pattern. Mendeleev wakes suddenly. The morning sun pours through the window, and for a moment he remains still, processing the images still dancing in his mind. "This is it," he whispers, his voice hoarse from dryness. "This is exactly it." With trembling hands, but now firm in purpose, he begins to organize the cards just as he saw in the dream. First by atomic weight, then adjusting according to chemical properties. Gradually, a pattern emerges before him. Hydrogen on top, alone. Below, lithium and beryllium in the first full row. Then boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. The properties repeat cyclically, like regular waves. "Anna, Anna, come quickly!" he shouts, his voice echoing down the halls. She runs in, still in her nightgown, fearing something terrible has happened. She finds Dmitri standing before his table, his eyes shining with an intensity she hasn't seen in months. "Look," he says, pointing to the organized cards. "See how the properties repeat? Alkali metals here, noble gases there. It's a natural law, a perfect periodicity." Anna looks at the cards, then at her husband's radiant face. She doesn't fully understand the science, but she recognizes the moment of triumph when she sees it. But then Dmitri stops abruptly. His smile fades as a terrible question crosses his mind. What if I had never had this dream? What if I had never discovered this organization? Chapter 4. A World Without the Periodic Table. St. Petersburg, Russia. A spring morning, 1869. Sitting in his leather chair, with the now complete periodic table spread on his desk, Mendeleev contemplates a question that haunts him. What would the world be like if this discovery had never occurred? He closes his eyes and imagines an alternate future. He sees 20th century laboratories still trapped in the elemental chaos he once knew. Chemists desperately trying to understand the relationships between elements without a map to guide them. "Without my table," he murmurs to himself, "discovering new elements would be purely accidental. No predictions, no guidance on where to search." Anna enters quietly, bringing tea. She has learned to recognize these moments of deep reflection in her husband. "Dmitri, what are you thinking about?" she asks softly, sitting beside him. "I'm imagining what scientific education would be like without organization," he replies, his eyes still fixed on the table.
Students memorizing endless lists of elements without understanding their connections. It would be like trying to learn geography without maps. He rises and walks to the window, watching students cross the university courtyard below. The development of new materials would be drastically slower, he continues, his voice gaining intensity. Without understanding element families, how could scientists predict the properties of metal alloys? How would they develop semiconductors? Anna watches him, fascinated by the passion in her voice. Though she doesn't fully understand the science, she recognizes the significance of what he has discovered. In medicine, Dmitri continues, turning to her, imagine chemists trying to develop drugs without understanding how similar elements behave in the human body. How many important discoveries would never happen? He returns to the table and gently touches it with his fingertips. And atomic physics. Without my organization, future scientists wouldn't have a foundation to understand atomic structure. They'd be like navigators without a compass in an endless ocean. Anna stands and places her hand on his shoulder. But you discovered it, Dmitri. You found the pattern. Yes, he smiles, covering her hand with his. And now I see the future that my table will make possible. I see new energy sources developed based on elemental understanding. Revolutionary materials for construction and technology. Efficient batteries that will make electrical energy portable. His eyes shine with visions of what's to come. I see humanity exploring space using materials and fuels developed through periodic understanding.
Computers, calculators, built with semiconductor elements identified through the patterns I've discovered. He stops and looks directly at Anna. Without the periodic table, humanity would still be crawling in scientific darkness. But with it, his voice fills with hope. With it, there are no limits to what we can discover and create. Outside, the sun sets over St. Petersburg, painting the lab in golden tones. Dmitri Mendeleev looks at his table one last time, realizing he has created not just an organization of elements, but a key that will open the doors of knowledge for future generations.